Hello, beautiful souls. Welcome in to an extremely powerful episode. I was just crying my eyes out and I'm feeling like overwhelmed with love and emotion because of the episode that we just recorded. We're recording this intro after recording it. And I am in like a state of awe with the messages that came through us in this episode. And I feel like I just went to an ayahuasca ceremony. That was so extremely healing. And I feel like I tapped into a deeper part of my heart because of all of the beautiful topics that we have dove into in this episode. And if you guys want a little intro into what it is we are about to speak about, Bella and I have been deep diving into the power of the heart. And not just like the physical 3D heart. We're talking the whole entire energetic vortex of the heart space, the heart chakra, the heart energetic field that is so intensely strong and literally stretches out, I'm pretty sure 7 feet beyond your 3D physical body, something ridiculous like that. And we have been deep diving into this information in a way where we're like, holy shit, things are making sense in a completely new way. We're getting downloads about what it means to actually connect to your intuition. We're doing research into like the science of intuition and how we're literally measuring our connection to these other realms. And we dive into it all today. You are going to be fucking mind blown. You are going to have such a deep logical understanding of what intuition is. And you're going to be blown away by what you learn about with the power of the heart. Compassion, love, intuition, heart-brain coherence. These are all terms that you think you understand. You are going to be understanding them in a completely new level. And the word compassion and love are going to take shape in your life in a completely new way. I promise you. And these are all downloads, moments of awareness, realizations that Bella and I have been having that have led us to a deeper embodiment of who we truly are, a deeper embodiment of our intuition, a deeper embodiment of being heart-led. And we want to pass along all of these next level points of evolution in your journey to you. So sit back. I'm not going to say too much. I want it to be a surprise. I want you guys to really jump into this information and be freaking mind blown, because you're going to be knocked off your feet in a good way. So definitely, if you want to sit down and have like a notepad out, this is a really powerful episode to extract a lot of like information from. And you're going to be opened up in a new way after listening to this, where you're going to get your own downloads and remembering about the heart. So take what resonates with you. Leave the rest, take notes if you want to, absorb it all without taking notes if you want to, and enjoy. Thank you so much for listening. And as always, guys, if you can hit that subscribe button on YouTube, hit subscribe button on Spotify and also Apple Podcasts, it really does help us. And we are on a journey of like sharing our message in a big way. And any support that you guys want to give from your heart to ours helps us, and it helps the mission that we're on. So thank you guys for being here. We love you so much, and we'll see you at the end of the episode. Chills. I feel like we're about to like start a full-on transmission.
Yeah, truly. Yeah, something is activated in me. Okay, so I want to start by giving some context as to why this topic is so on fire for us, because it's really coming off the heels of some really powerful conversations that the two of us have been having, and these sort of like up levels. And it's almost like we've been on this journey of, you know, taking action, living our lives, creating this business, just doing our thing as human beings on this soul-led path. And we've kind of re-entered this arena of going even deeper with the knowledge and understanding, right? Perfecting and sharpening our own gifts and genius. And a lot of that includes, the sciences of healing, of human design, of creativity. And most recently, the two of us really diving into things around the chakra system, our energy centers. And we landed at this fascinating revelation, really, and deeper understanding of the heart, which brings us to why we're doing a whole deep dive on it today. And one of the context points that I want to give is to explain essentially kind of like how we're referencing the heart from here on out and give it its place in our auras and in our body and in our life. And essentially, you can think of the heart as when you look at the 7 main chakras that we all have and the corresponding 7 layers of our aura. The heart center is the bridge between worlds. It transmutes energy from physical to spiritual and the other way around, right? Knowledge, inspiration, higher realms that we access through the crown, mind, and throat are pushed through the fire of the heart to land in the physical vessel through the solar plexus, the sacral, and the root. So it's really this bridge between worlds that once you open that bridge, you automatically up-level your life. And this is an important realization we're having because we all know these sayings of the heart's calling and compassion through the heart and love is the answer and all these things. And we're like, yeah, okay, sounds good. But here we're realizing, no, that's actually what's happening on a very observable level and just an experience that doesn't even need to be observed. So that is one thing to contextualize, is understanding that this episode is going to explain even further what this bridge functions as, what it means that the heart is connecting you between worlds, that it's its very own full-on sense organ with awareness, with ability to have intelligence. It sends signals in your body. It's not just about heart health and the physical, which is very important, but it's also about spiritual, emotional health. It's about you creating your aligned life, living your soul path. That is the context of the power of the heart, which hopefully now you're seeing why we're so stoked about this. So, Nikki, I want to give you a second to add anything there in terms of context and just sort of how we've arrived at this point here.
Yeah, I feel like you and I are kind of on a journey of, we're at this, like how you said, we're like hitting new levels with our learning, but also our embodiment. And I think the reason why we are hitting another level with our embodiment is because we're learning about the body from a spiritual lens. Like you can learn about the heart from just a strictly 3D lens. You can learn about even the energy centers, I feel like, from a very 3D lens. Or you can go into it and learn about like the unseen and how the unseen is interacting with your body and with all of the chakras, or people like to call them energy vortices. And it's so powerful that we're all on this journey together of like up leveling, because now we're grounding all this information into the 3D and marrying the two. So it's very common when you're on this spiritual journey to learn about concepts of like compassion and love and open your heart and how powerful healing is, and understanding how love is such a powerful force within your healing journey. But everything we're going to dive into today is going to take your understanding of that to the next level, because we're bringing in more logic on how the body, the physical 3D body, interacts with the unseen, specifically with the heart. And
yeah,
it's so powerful once we learn about this, because then we understand that the heart is not just one of the chakras. It's actually one of the most important. So I'm really excited to dive into this. Did you want to start with talking about the science that we've been diving into in regards to the heart? Where did you want to start this?
Yes. Yeah. I actually had one more thing that I think would be good as an intro point, and then we can get into the science, because you were saying how this idea of like the heart marries the two worlds. And I think that's so important to expand on for a second, because it's so interesting that I think this marks, just for this community too, and where we're at as a collective, of understanding the importance of marrying the two, and that it's not like one is better than the other. It truly is the coming together of them. And there's another interesting sort of contextualization that can help us set up this conversation, which is understanding some of the wisdom that we understand about the heart through a human design lens, which uses the same 7 chakra system, plus it has 2 more centers. But the heart center in human design is actually called the heart/ego center. And really what it shows us through, it has these four main like gifts. And overall, what the heart is showing us is in this 3D world, the heart is understanding the importance of providing for the physical body. And the heart understands that we have a physical vessel that needs to be cared for. So when you start to open up that lens and add that as a flavor to the power of the heart, which we'll get into, you start to see how things like abundance or wants and desires or different ways of expression are coming from the heart and have all these different flavors because it's understanding the importance of marrying the two. And if you were to like go through and read, there's just four of like in the human design system gifts that live in the heart, and they start to open your mind to the different flavors that the heart can take place in this life, and also how there's actually like this healthy expression of what some people maybe in the mainstream spiritual would call ego, when in reality, it's an expression of a heart's desire that understands the importance of the physical, of the material world, in being the bridge between, the higher realms and the physical world. And so I'm seeing that on like a deeper level too, of how we can, see that the heart really is opening up almost like an infinite pathway toward an aligned life that isn't limited to either what we consider to be spiritual or what we consider to be physical. It's like, no, it's both. And it's marrying them together.
Do you think that the word ego in human design is more connected to what we would say as the soul? Like the soul self? Almost like the combination of your consciousness with the 3D self?
I guess so, yes, because it's like essentially alluding to the individuated portion of you as the divine, and like the sense of I, me, mine. So what makes you you, and like the things that you, as like an individual, as an individuated portion, view as like, like almost the quote unquote like mask and costume that we're wearing. So in a way it's like connected to the soul in terms of just your sense of self, not exactly your sense of self, but like the individuation, the idea of like the healthy expression of I and like who I am. It's a little bit different in HD because you have the G center, which is like for identity, and that's where they say the personality crystal is held. But 100% the heart and ego has to do with like who you are, type of idea of like what you want, because you're living in this physical realm, and it's like understanding that there's needs and there's things that we can like use abundance for in its highest expression.
Wow. Okay. I'm so excited to get into all of this. And if you guys are like, wait, I don't even know like what the fuck you're talking about, we're going to break this all down in a very digestible way and kind of share with you guys like the aha moments that we've had. And also just, we've been doing a lot of our own research as well. Because here's the thing, when you're on this journey, you start getting downloads of information. And like, it's funny that I'm going to talk about this because it's literally coming from these higher realms, and it's coming through the heart, the bridge of the heart. So let's start this conversation with talking about what we have found with like the science of this, and how science is starting to catch up to what spiritual teachings have always taught about the heart as this really sacred center. And if you look at ancient teachings, you'll notice that they all talk about the same thing with different terminology. It's like this center space. And it is the heart, the connection to the heart. It's like the energetic vortex of the heart. So you were watching a documentary last night called, what was it?
Called The Power of the Heart.
Power of the Heart. It's on Gaia. Mm-hmm. And I would love for you to...
We'll link a lot of this is kind of like a resource heavy episode. So check out the newsletter. And if you don't see something in there, it might be in our newsletter. So that's another reason to get in our newsletters. We'll share more of this stuff.
Yeah, totally. It's going to be like, you're going to want to dive into this stuff after listening to this. I would love for you to kind of drop us into the science of what you have learned through the documentary and any other like downloads that were coming through for you.
Yes. Okay. So one of the coolest studies that I was learning about through this film was this. So first of all, there's an institute called the Heart Math Institute, and they seem, at least to my knowledge, they have like they have so many research, they have studies and all these things. You can go on their website and click through all these studies, and like they share all these findings. So if this is all tickling your fancy, that's a great place to go. So they do this study that's essentially called, it's like the arousing versus calm image study. And what they do is they have patients like sitting in front of a computer, and they flash different images in front of them. Some of them are arousing images, so meaning things that are like either a little scary or intense. Some of them are like, you know, I don't know, it could be like a war image or like an animal attack, like things like that would sort of typically arouse, right? And then there's calm. So like a bunny or like a lake or like a stream, like things like that, or someone hugging, stuff like that. So there's like 5 or 10 seconds or something between each image. And basically what they find is they're tracking through monitors on the person these signals that are happening in the heart and in the brain and then in the rest of the body, right? So like sweaty palms or, you know, whatever other like signals that are showing that there's some bodily reaction. And they're also having, what's it called? What are the things that you put on the body to like sense things?
Oh, like the technology?
Sensors. Sorry, that's it. Sensors. I think it's just the word sensors. And then they put sensors on the brain and the heart as well to understand in what order are things happening. So what they found is that the heart becomes aware of the image on the screen before the brain does, meaning the order of information flow goes heart to brain to body. So what we think is that we see an image and our brain gets a signal and then we feel it in the gut, or we like have sweaty palms because it's a scary image, whatever. But the heart is receiving the data before the image even shows. That's the crazy part. Is essentially they summarize that the heart is connected to a type of intuition that's not bound by the limits of time and space. So they're monitoring how when there's a black screen on the monitor, the heart rate is going down at a different rate depending on the next image that's about to show. So there's a greater change happening before an arousing image versus the calm image. And so they're seeing that the heart is able to essentially detect and start sending the signal to the brain before the image actually shows on screen. And this is having us start to see like, okay, the heart literally has its own intelligence and is a full-on sense organ, right? When we say sense organ, meaning like you have your typical 5 of like touch, smell, feel, whatever, right? But now it's like, okay, there's other senses going on. And this is also what we're learning and discovering all the time on this podcast and conversations, is like the different forms of intelligence and high sense perceptions that we all have. So the heart is doing that as well. And you know, this is just one study of many that shows this ability for the heart to sense what's going on before it even happens. And to connect this essentially to how, you know, this scientific institute then categorizes types of intuition, is they basically have, they categorize 3 types of intuition. So you have like implicit knowledge, which is essentially when there's like an unconscious understanding of something that we've gained through past experiences. So we're not like explicitly remembering it from the past, but it's like sort of coded into our understanding. And so we just know it immediately based on like pattern recognition and, you know, those like typical psychological functions of like, oh, I see this, I associate it with blank. That's like implicit knowledge that we view as intuition. Then you have energetic sensitivity, which is the ability of the nervous system to detect and respond to subtle environmental signals, such as electromagnetic fields. It's like the type of intuition that people, you know, pick up on changes in their surroundings. People can tell that there's like an earthquake coming before it does. And it's like essentially the body's innate capacity to perceive energetic shifts that maybe not aware to the conscious mind. So that's like energetic. You can kind of think about how it's like attached to the field in a way, and is also just, you know, a human, almost like primal intelligence of feeling something that's going on that you can't see or know about right now. And then the third one is non-local intuition. So this is the sense of knowing or perceiving information that can't be attributed to prior knowledge or environmental cues. So this type of intuition suggests an inherent interconnectedness between all things, where an individual can access information beyond the confines of time and space. Examples include like a parent sensing that their child is in danger from miles away, or entrepreneurs know how to make a decision about like business based on an inner knowing. So first of all, that's just very interesting to think about, like categorizing it that way and giving us more language to understand like, okay, intuition is a very real thing. And there's actually these different versions of it that are starting to be observed. And tying it back to the study is I see the heart as kind of combining the two of energetic sensitivity, where it knows something is happening in the field. And then I think the non-local part is what's most fascinating, because this is what's happening to people who are doing our quantum clarity activation meditation, which, as a side note, we have this insanely cool meditation that's a Heart-Brain Coherence. And people have been messaging us and telling us how they're able to get clarity and access to their vision of, you know, their highest self, their aligned life in ways that they never have before. And what I know is happening is that they're tapping into the heart's ability to connect to the higher realms that are not local, right? So it's like the heart is literally giving you information that then is processed by your regular sense organs and your brain. And it's like, where is this coming from? Okay, it's literally coming from a different timeline or space or future or past. We don't know, but the heart knows.
This is so cool. Like, what Heart Math Institute is doing is literally bridging the science and the spiritual in regards to us being connected to something beyond what our little 3D self can see. And I just wanted to kind of add in a little bit more information on what HMI is, Heart Math Institute, because when you dive into this topic and you start learning about these studies through Greg Braden or David Icke or whoever it was that made that documentary, this is like the main institute that does all of the studies regarding consciousness and understanding the heart and intuition. And I'm pretty sure they're in California, I want to say. But what their whole mission is, I just looked it up. Heart Math Institute aims to create a more coherent and compassionate world by empowering people to connect with the intelligence of their hearts. Their mission emphasizes scientific validation of the heart's intuitive guidance and practical solutions to improve human and global coherence. In summary, HMI blends science, spirituality, and practical training to help individuals better understand and harness the power of the heart for personal and collective well-being. Like, holy crap, if you guys are intrigued by this and want to go to apply to a job, look if they're hiring.
Seriously. Oh my God.
Yeah, but
it's funny. The
holy
Heart
crap.
Math Institute is literally like a manifestation of a heart in the real world.
Oh, yeah. Wow.
Because they're bridging
Yes.
the science and the
Whoa.
spirit, the upper realms and the lower realms.
Meta. Oh my God. So cool. Okay. Wow. Like, I don't even know where the heck to start with what you just shared, but it's so important. You and I like intuitively felt that we wanted to start with the science here, because you can hear about all these concepts about like your heart is connected to your intuition and higher realms. But when you start tuning into these studies, it is so freaking cool to get your logical brain, the left side of your brain, like on board with what it is we're diving into. And I remember I first started learning about this through Greg Braden. And if you guys are like, oh, I remember you guys talked about this. There was an episode we did about something with technology. What was the title of that episode? The Greg Braden episode.
Yeah, it was about remembering our divinity.
Yeah.
Divinity's in the title.
And, like the power of AI and how there's like a fine line of it coming in and taking our divinity.
Right.
That was an episode inspired from a Greg Braden retreat that I went to, and he talked all about the power of the heart. And I was sharing a little bit about it, but we're going into so much more detail in this episode. And I remember hearing this and I just was like, wow, like we are meant to be guided from within here, because when you're guided from just your brain and you're just using logic and you're only on the left side of your brain, just rationalizing your life and thinking that you need to have everything make sense from what you see in your current 3D surroundings. It's what we always say, you're going to continuously build a life that's just like a safety bubble when you literally have this connection to higher intelligence. And I know we're going to talk a little bit more about like having your life of alignment unfold and like a manifestation of a life aligned through listening to this intelligence. But I just hope as you guys are hearing the science that you feel this sense of like, wow, okay, when I'm sitting down and doing like the quantum clarity meditation that we have, which by the way is free. We'll put the link to it below. There's so much more going on like scientifically than what we're even realizing. And when you realize the science behind it, you're in like a deeper sense of surrender with allowing that process to take place. So that's why I love talking about the science aspect of this. And I remember something that really clicked for me with the science with Greg Braden and his teachings was he was saying how HMI, Heart Math Institute, they refer to the heart as little brain because of all the sensory neurons that it has. It has 40,000, and it's actually more of a brain than the brain is a brain. Like it's more intelligent than the brain. And something that's really cool to understand is that if you can imagine like the visual of all this information channeling into your heart space and like being sent up to the other chakra centers and sent up to the brain has two parts. It has the left side, which is like very logical, rational. It is literally responsible for us perceiving everything as separate. So when you're only in the left side of your brain, you won't really see like the interconnectedness that exists in this reality. And then the right side is the creative side. It's the side that is receiving the information from the heart. So if you imagine like the highway into the brain, we're able to make sense of the data and the information we get through the heart through the right side of the brain, which is why when you think about how you open up the right side of the brain and start activating those neural pathways, you do it through creativity. You do it through art. You do it through play. You do it through imagination. And when you think about a child playing, like literally they're on their broomstick. I remember I said this in the episode that we did where we talked about this briefly. It's like they're able to tap into a reality where they're seeing the freaking horse and they're seeing the dragons and they're seeing all of these beings because they're not yet in the left side of the brain in a way where they're blocked off from accessing the right. Because what happens in this 3D matrixy world is that we start to cut off our connection to the heart and then we're kind of left brain dominated. And it's so important to have constant communication between like the left and the right side of the brain and to have them working in unison so that we can, yes, see the 3D and see it as separate and kind of like almost balancing the groundedness of the 3D with also the imagination and being able to expand past what your left side of the brain deems as possible or factual or truth. And it's so beautiful to think about that because you can see how powerful play is in your life, like the things that open you up, that get you thinking in new ways, and also creation. And this is why people will say like the artists are the ones that lead the revolutions because they're tapped into the data and the stream of information that is beyond what we are seeing and deeming as rational or possible or logical. And they're able to kind of expand out into new ways of thinking as they're receiving information and data that's connected to other realms. It's so cool.
Right. Yeah. It's so wild. Everything you just said is actually, it's kind of like a fun side story of one of our clients right now that me and you're working with together. We kind of like had this shift happen for her because there's, like you're saying, there's this right brain that is very like creative, the heart, like I have all these ideas, I want to like make this happen, blah, blah, blah. And then when we have this idea that the logic brain actually in of itself, if we tell ourselves that that's problematic and we also are in the overfunction of it, where the left brain would come in and look at this journal full of ideas and be like, okay, but how are we going to make that happen? And go to the story that like, okay, because I don't know right now with my existing logic how to do this, it means I can't do it. And the switch was made through, first of all, bringing compassion and acceptance to the logic side and being like, well, first of all, why are we saying that this is a problem? Why are we saying that it's bad that you're logical? What if we can actually use this? And the whole thing flipped on its head to then basically, like you're saying, it's like piecing together the left and right to work together.
Yes.
And all of a sudden she was like, oh, I can just use my thirst for knowledge and understanding through logic to figure out how to make all of these happen, because now I'm believing in myself that I actually can.
Wow. Yeah. And that's literally the balance of the masculine and feminine, because people will say the logical brain is more of the masculine and that the left, the right, creative. Am I mixing this up? I always want to say that the left is the creative, but it's the right.
No, yes. The right. Yes.
Yeah. Left is the logical. There you go. LL.
Right.
Remember that.
Yeah.
And then right is creative, because it's right to be creative. This is how I remember things in my head.
Yes.
So yeah, it's marrying the two, because if you think about it, if someone gets an idea that's like beyond this 3D realm, they're receiving information on what's possible. Like think about like Elon Musk,
like a
for
non-local
example.
idea.
Yes. Yeah.
Yes.
Think about like Elon Musk, who's literally like defying the laws of the 3D realm. He's receiving this information, and then you need to marry it into the logic and the reason by having people that are working in logic and reason in order to ground those ideas into the physical. Because if you're just receiving data and information, there has to be a way of bringing in the masculine, or else it's just going to always stay an idea, you know?
Yes, totally.
So it's balance. Yes. This is the balance of your masculine and feminine. And it's not to say that if you're a boy, you have to be more masculine. This is a very individual like journey of balancing your own two energies, because it doesn't have to do with the sex of who you are. These are energies.
Right. Yes, totally.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Did you have any other like scientific points that you wanted to make? There's definitely something to be said about the electromagnetic field.
Yes.
Is that what you were going to say?
Yeah. Do you want to explain?
Yeah, I didn't really watch much on that, like with the actual like science and hard facts, but I've just heard about it a bunch. How like when you look at the power of the heart, it is literally the strongest electromagnetic field in your body. And I remember Greg Braden giving an analogy where if you think about the voltage that's in your heart, it would be equal to if you lined, I'm going to botch this, but it was something along the lines of if you picture like a football field filled with batteries, like big car batteries. He gave the voltage of the batteries, and maybe it was even more than one football field. He said that's the power of one individual heart. Isn't that fucking nuts?
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense. Like, yeah, this actually, I can read this little excerpt from the HMI, which is explaining, this was under one of the studies or like papers that they have on heart communication and the heart's electromagnetic field. And it says, the heart is the most powerful source of electromagnetic energy in the human body, producing the largest rhythmic electromagnetic field of any of the body's organs. The heart's electrical field is about 60 times greater in amplitude than the electrical activity generated by the brain. This field, measured in the form of an electrocardiogram, ECG, can be detected anywhere on the surface of the body. Furthermore, the magnetic field produced by the heart is more than 100 times greater in strength than the field generated by the brain and can be detected up to 3 feet away from the body in all directions. This also syncs up with what the Hands of Light book, Barbara Ann Brennan, explains about that auric layer in terms of its distance and like the strength of it. And yeah, it also explains how this article shows like an image of this kind of like a typical image where you see these like waves forming around the body, and they kind of like cone in at the top, like where a donut. The crown is in the root. Yes, yeah, exactly. And it explains also how information from the heart is encoded through like heartbeat patterns, hormones, electrical waves, nerve impulses, and those things are picked up on by other people. So there's like this wave that they're talking about, and then there's actual signals sent out that we pick up on from each other in the space around us. And then it's like tying it back to the auric layer of the heart. Apparently that's the level where you can be, I think, I maybe need to double check this, but where you can be like in a room interacting with other people without you being aware of it. And you're just like sending and receiving signals to each other from that layer.
I feel like we do that even from far away.
I agree. I think 100% because it's going through the universal energy field. So there's no bound.
Yeah. I'll like text you and be like, I'm crying. And you're like, I knew you were crying.
Yeah, I'm like, I know. Yeah, but that's I think just to sort of, I mean, there's more like quote unquote science that we'll touch on, but I think what's also interesting is just kind of starting to tie some of these observations to the wisdom of it. And like, you know, even as I'm reading about heart rate variability and how like the HRV of your heart rate variability is like this biomarker, if you will, that measures it's essentially how quickly you're able to go back to a baseline. So your heart will like increase quickly, right? If you are doing a workout or you have like your stress or a trigger or whatever. And then the quicker that it goes down to the baseline, right? And same thing the other direction, like from a resting state, you know, over whatever, being like super fatigued or something to a baseline, that is like a marker that helps you figure out essentially how regulated you are, but it goes further because it's affecting your emotions and your thoughts. So this is like another avenue of then how physiologically the heart is helping, literally again between worlds, is like your physiological response that can look like, you know, a literal physical discomfort of like what it would imagine to be like under physical stress or feeling like a trigger that's like living in your body. And then also like the emotions and the thoughts that you're having. And this is also what makes it so tangible to improve these things. Like all of the practices that we talk about, like breath work is one of the most incredible things for your HRV and heart function, because there's literal different practices that help you to change like the baseline and more like in a healthy container, manipulate the way that your heart is working. And then that gives you a better baseline. So now you're like better able to process emotions and thoughts and triggers and all these things. And it literally comes back to this physiological function of the heart. And now that we know the like higher wisdom of it, it's like, okay, this is even helping us to dance between the worlds, right? To like process data and see how it's making us feel and be in this open state, able to like process information without, you know, the heart being in like an incoherent state.
Yeah, when I looked up a little bit on the Heart Math Institute, they say in this description of what their mission is that they measure heart-brain coherence through HRV. So
Whoa.
I feel like we can tie in now the teachings of heart-brain coherence, because this is where things get really powerful. And heart-brain coherence can be perceived in like from different angles, but I'm going to describe it in my own way that just makes sense for me. You can imagine that we have this like electromagnetic signal that's being sent out from the heart, but we also have electromagnetic signals that are being sent out from the brain, and it's like a radio receiver, and the heart is a radio receiver. And the heart and the brain can work together in unison, in coherence, or they can be a little bit messed up or totally messed up and incoherent, where one's looking this way and the other one's looking this way, and then your soul's over here being like, what's going on? And you're being like tugged in both directions. And when you're in coherence, you can imagine, I remember seeing this visual in Joe Dispenza's Rewired docuseries on Gaia, where he showed the brain waves and also the electromagnetic waves from the heart in unison, where they were both flowing up and down in a unified manner. And I said this in the other episode we recorded on the heart, where you can imagine when they're in coherence that the highway of the information you're receiving from your heart is open, it's cleared, and you're able to really connect in with your heart's information by having a clear channel up to the brain, where you're able to digest it from that right brain and then bring it eventually into the left and have like that flow of information. And coherence in the heart is important, and then coherence in the brain is important, And then coherence between the two of them is important.
Mm.
And I want to read a little bit about the definition just so that people can have like a concrete definition of what heart-brain coherence is. Heart-brain coherence is a state of harmony and synchronization between the heart and the brain. It occurs when the heart's rhythms are in a balanced, stable, and orderly pattern, which in turn influences brain function in a positive and coherent way. This state can have profound effects on our mental, emotional, and physical health. The heart sends more signals to the brain than the brain sends to the heart. This two-way communication occurs through neurological, biochemical, and biophysical and energetic means. When the heart is in a state of coherence, these signals optimize brain function, affecting perception, decision-making, and emotional regulation. So what I'm gathering from this is that when we're in coherence, it's not like, oh, I'm closing my eyes and tapping into my intuition. Your intuition just becomes a way of being because it's constantly being sent up to the brain, where you are now having an orderly perception on yourself, on life, that is beyond what you just deem from like the left side of the brain as, oh, this is just the way things are. This is just how I am. When there's coherence, you're able to have that flow of data from, what were you referencing it as? An external, when someone receives information. I just want to like keep using the same terminology here when they're receiving data from.
Oh, non-local?
Non-local. Yeah. Yeah. So when we're saying non-local, we're referencing data and information that's coming from other realms. So when you're receiving that non-local, right? That's how you were using it.
Yeah, now other realms, and also just like the essentially not in your immediate environment.
Right. So when we're in coherence, we have access to that because there's a flow. And it's so beautiful to remember how when we're healing, we're literally creating coherence in the heart. And when we create coherence in the heart, we're able to actually have a clear perception on what is possible for us and what's actually happening in the world with the unseen and the seen. And we're able to have a clear perception on things. And it's so interesting to like tie those two together, because it's not like, oh, I'm just healing over here and it's just for me and I want to feel good. It's like, no, when you're healing, you're literally clearing the traffic jam that is existing between your heart and your brain so that you can function in a world that is way more than just the 3D. And there's so much in the unseen, and you're able to marry the two and actually function from a place within your heart, as opposed to the ego that is very fear-based. And when you're connecting into that coherence of the heart, you understand deeper truths because you're actually receiving the data and the information from out there.
Right. Yeah, this is so cool too, because to make it like really practical for people and like what you can do, this is why it's actually really cool that you're saying how the Heart Math Institute measures heart brain coherence through HRV, because something that is so tangible to do in your daily life is, if you're, let's say whatever fitness band you have, the Whoop strap shows HRV. I don't know if the Apple Watch or like the Fitbit does, but whatever, if you have a fitness band that shows you that, tracking your HRV over time and trying to increase the number is such a good thing to do, because it literally improves all of these things of emotional stability, improved cognitive function, better health, heightened intuition. And it makes sense because you can improve your HRV over time the more that you do all these practices of breath work, meditation, physical exercise, subconscious healing, all of the things that help to literally make the heart signal more coherent. And that's like something I notice in myself. I always can tell when my HRV drops below a certain point. I notice immediately that I'm a bit more like, just like easily triggered, for lack of a better word, by my environment, and get more easily like stressed out by things. And the times when my HRV is like average for me or higher, I literally just function better. Like everything is just going much more smoothly. And yeah, it just all ties together, because it's like the heart being that passageway that's both managing physiological functions and is also connecting you to higher realms. So when you focus in on the heart health, it's like that is going to have a huge cascading effect over all of these different aspects.
Wait, I'm having a huge realization around why it's important to like put yourself in stress, quote unquote stress, like through working out and stuff, kind of like the downloads I've been getting about being on the Peloton and like channeling higher information. Because when you put yourself in like a higher heart rate, you have to connect in with your heart and do the work of channeling that higher guidance in order to regulate yourself. And that process of like bringing yourself from down here to back there, you gain like how do I word this? You gain the skill of connecting in with your heart and self-regulating in moments where the left brain wants to take control. And it's really important to like challenge yourself in those ways so that you have the skills of like connecting in with your powers when you're in discomfort and challenge. Does that make sense?
Yeah, 100%.
Yes. Yeah. If you guys have never heard of the Whoop, Bella and I both wear these, and they measure HRV, and it's so interesting, like how you're saying, because me too, when I'm in the higher like HRV numbers, when my metrics are higher, I can tell that I'm like more connected to myself. And I don't know if it's like causation or I'm like thinking about it in that perspective because I'm seeing the numbers and I know this information, but it's really cool now that I'm reading like HMI literally uses HRV to measure heart coherence. Like that's freaking amazing.
Yeah. Yeah. I remember this is also such proof of how capable we are of like improving these metrics. When I was doing my breathwork certification program, it was like a 3-month program. I did it back in 2022. My HRV was over 200 regularly.
Wow.
Which is like, that's like I posted a screenshot one time on Twitter and people were like, who are you? Like, are you a fucking pro athlete?
Wow.
Like what is going on? Because they were like, how do you have this high of an HRV? And it was because I was doing breath work every single day. And at that time, I was going through an immense amount of discomfort because I had just quit my job and taken the leap and went to Costa Rica and was like freaking kind of freaking out about life and what I was going to do. And I was also getting my breathwork certification and practicing daily. And it showed. My HRV was spectacular. So now, like, yeah. So that's like why it's one of my, like, I always know, like, if I'm trending down, I need to like get back into those practices because the higher the number, like I immediately know that I'm going to be functioning better on all, you know, on all metrics.
It's interesting too to think about why we're more emotionally stable when we have a coherent heart, because when you're going through challenge and let's say you're feeling an emotion or you're triggered or you're in a situation where you literally feel, I would always say to my coach, I'm like, I feel like someone took my brain and took it out of my head and put a different brain in. But that's because in those moments I was dealing with an incoherent heart. So I wasn't as connected to the deeper truths. And I was more so connected with the limiting thought patterns of my brain and the subconscious limitations and wiring and firing thought patterns that are there for protection. And it's interesting to think about how you look at people and you're like, damn, they just faced that issue in their life like I'm just saying like a challenge with so much grace and ease. But it makes sense because when you're coherent and you're connected in with that highway of information and you're channeling that higher guidance, you literally feel like you can handle anything because you understand that you're always safe, you're always protected, everything's always happening for you. Like when you're facing challenge, you're always understanding, oh, this is literally for me to expand and to evolve. I'm not a victim. There's no such thing as being a victim because I'm fucking creating this. And you're just immediately connected in with those higher truths. And it's tempting in those moments to kind of like give up because it's so difficult to like want to get silent with yourself in those moments or want to do the breath work because you're just clouded with all those thoughts and fears and limitations. But you just gain that trust muscle of like, oh, no. This is the time where I have to lean in even more. Like this is the time where I have to create coherence even more because I'm needing that data and that information to come through my heart. And that's where we like gain the skill set of being in a lower HRV and harnessing into like our strength to pull ourselves back up.
Right. Yeah. And this is kind of a nice segue to understanding like the higher purpose then of the heart and like sort of the spiritual and like the wisdom of the heart, really, because then you start to see how, you know, the heart is like this power and this engine, which it literally is in human design. It's a motor and it like provides energy. And you can start to see how like then when you're clear on your heart's desires and you are, you know, spending time and living in this frequency of self-acceptance and power and, you know, just confidence and like understanding that you can achieve anything you want, for example, then it's like through the heart, you really ground it into both the physical and the upper realms, where it's like, yeah, it just starts to make sense why that heart's calling can also be really challenging and can be like audacious or can be like scary to your current physical self, because the heart understands its power, and literally it is powerful. Like it has these electromagnetic pulses coming out of it. It's literally like an enormous battery source within you. Like there's a real power to it, and because it's bridging the worlds together, now you can see how your heart's calling could be some, you know, goal in life or a relationship or whatever flavor it is that maybe in your local reality feels like too much or feels taboo or feels unacceptable or whatever it is, but the heart knows that it's meant for you, and the heart is giving you the vision from the higher realm that is detached from the physical, but it brings it into the heart on purpose because it's the highest expression of playing in the 3D, of abundance, of like being your fucking unapologetic self and being a heart-led whatever you are that doesn't, it understands that it's fine, it's safe, everything's going to be fine, so I'm going to go and do what I want to do. And that's where you see like people, you know, just creating a life that is of their own paradigm, of their own rules, and doing it in their own way, because the heart has that wisdom for you and it knows. And that's why when you connect with it in a Heart-Brain Coherence, or you do our meditation, or you just spend time in your heart, you're like, wow, I have a different perspective now than the mind would give me, than this local experience that I'm having.
Yes. I'm like full body chills right now. I've actually been getting a lot more chills as people are speaking, or I'm on a client call, or I'll say something and I see it as every time there's like this big wave of energy in my body and I get chills, I literally feel like there's a whole fucking squad of guides here being like, yes, 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 yes. So what you just said, guys, like rewind it, hit that 15-second mark, go back twice and listen to what Bella just said, because this is the secret sauce to fucking life. It seriously is. You're literally being guided from your heart space with your vision, and what your heart desires matters. There's a time and place for the spiritual teachings around acceptance and surrendering and flowing with, but that all ties together with your vision. They're not separate, and they're not one or the other. Like, oh, I have to follow spiritual teachings of teachers that don't talk about manifestation or going after your dreams. It is one journey. It is one journey. Your path to your highest timeline is by sinking into the deepest state of acceptance with where you're at and seeing it as a literal portal to your next chapter. We're here to evolve. That's it. And have fun and create and expand our consciousness. It's time to fucking go. Like, it's time to create. It's time to act on that vision. And it's so powerful when you tap into these teachings, because no longer is it out in the future. You're like, wow, it's literally already done. And that's why, like, I texted you yesterday about like growing a part of our business in like this specific way. I'll just, it doesn't matter the details of what I texted you, but in that moment, I literally had a full-blown vision of that already being done. And I'm like, oh, I just have to claim this is already being done, figure out what energetic state of being I'm being called to tune into, and then act on it and see it and know it as already being done. And I think this is where the teachings of like detachment and surrender come in, because it's very tempting to get that vision and feel like it's out there in the distance and, oh, I'm just not that being yet. Yeah, maybe you're not, but it's divine. And you're meant to go in through like into this whole portal of evolution, where that's the whole point of why you're here. you're literally expanding into the energetic being that can hold that vision and who can sustain it in a way where it's just your reality. And yeah, I just hope with what we're sharing, guys, you really take your visions seriously. Like when you do the quantum timeline healing meditation and you see into that reality, that's you. Like that is literally you already existing in a different energetic state, living in that reality. And it's so beautiful to see it as done.
Mm.
Yeah, another really powerful lesson here is when we think about a collective shift in consciousness, what we're learning about the heart is that it's literally a portal to higher awareness. Like we realize higher awareness and we snap into higher states of consciousness through the portal of the heart. So it's interesting to actually apply this also to a collective scale where when we are centered in our heart space and we have compassion towards other people, it goes from being this woo woo, like, oh, have love and compassion for others, like, not in like a pity way of like, oh, like poor them, have compassion. Like, no,
Yeah, because
literally,
that would be out of fear.
yes. Yeah, literally hold the frequency of compassion for another as they are like finding their power in a specific angle of life. Because what we have just learned is that the heart has this really powerful electromagnetic field that is spreading so far out that we can't even see, that has an impact on another person, where compassion is not just, oh, woo woo, whimsical, floaty. It's like, holy crap, that's an electromagnetic signal that you are sending out to another person that allows for coherence in their own heart, where they are able to awaken and remember something within themselves. And when we talk about like even like the political conversation we had with that episode 70, I think it was. Yeah, episode 70. It's like we're so tempted to judge and further divide when other people have opposing opinions as us. But what if we just saw past the identity of our opinions and saw us all as individual souls and also one soul that's all connected? And David Icke was sharing that when you're connected to your heart space, love is not an emotion, it's a state of being. Because when you are in the state of love, you are channeling higher awareness where you're able to look at someone and you don't have to try to love them. You just love them because you understand that they are you and you are them and you guys are one. And I think compassion and love takes an entire new role and meaning in our life when we understand it from like the logical scientific perspective of it. So I'm curious, like, what's landing for you in regards to this? Because this is like a really beautiful conversation that's definitely important.
Yeah, I mean, I wrote down this quote that this guy said, who I didn't catch his name, because you know how later in the documentary they stop showing the person's name and then you don't realize what it was. So anyway, I wrote this quote and I don't know who it is, so apologies, but it's from the Power of the Heart film. And it's kind of, yeah, along the lines of this real meaning of compassion. So I guess one of like the root definitions or meanings, like origin, that's what I'm looking for, of compassion means to keep company with. And he said this thing that I thought was so powerful, and this kind of relates to like the way that we accept people and also how we like interact with them, especially when people are like going through something, or you're in a relationship and you're trying to like whatever, all these, there's so many opportunities for compassion in life, right? So he said, when I am not directly living, when I am not patient, I want to problem solve your pain and not keep you company with it. And I was like, holy shit. Because
wait,
it's
can
like
you
this
reread
difference
that?
between, so when I am not, so the first part of this quote, he's referencing a Lao Tzu quote talking about like the 3 keys to life is something to do with like direct living, like presence, patience, and, you know, compassion essentially. So then he says, when I am not directly living, when I am not patient, I want to problem solve your pain and not keep you company with it. Meaning it's different flavor of compassion, right? Keep company with the person and what they're going through versus problem solve and try to fix out of like an urgency or like
Fear.
being impatient because we have to like solve this or something bad is going to happen.
Right.
And yeah, that just like really struck me because I think it also relates to, I mean, on so many levels of the things that we're learning in our relationships, our work as coaches and mentors, as leaders. Like there's just all these different ways that we are continuously being invited to check in on ourselves of like if we're trying to like problem solve our partner versus just like keep company with them and like create a container for them to like shift and change or whatever it might be. And it's so nuanced, but it's like that just really brought kind of like a new energy to the power of the heart to create that container and to understand like, yeah, just the nuances of how we can tend to our intentions and the ways that we interact with our partners and our people, and of like practicing that patience and acceptance, which is freaking hard to do sometimes. Like there definitely is the moments where, yeah, just like the ego mind or the problem solver mind or like the part of us that just like feels like we got to do something about it. And then we're like, let's just keep company. Let's just keep this person's company, like be in company with this person, be compassionate with them. And I thought that was really, really beautiful. And it kind of was followed up by this quote from Lao Tzu, which says, the longest journey you will make in your life is from your head to your heart. And it's like alluding to, I mean, I think this speaks to, this is like before even, I think, a time of such heavy conditioning that puts us in our mind, right? Like Lao Tzu didn't, no, I mean, maybe it was happening in his time too, but basically that, yeah, just going from the need to like be right, the need to make sense of it, the need to whatever, that journey down to the heart is like very profound and completely life changing. I think I saw that you said something that David Icke said about like head people are very different from heart people.
Yeah. And they lead very different lives.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because the head is like where you'll find people that it's just like the sense of being right is just another form of ego. And I think this is like the balance of learning all this spiritual information too. Our ego can start to like grip onto that, where we're thinking, oh, because we like know this information when we don't know anything still. And this is like a constant check that I'm taking with myself, even more lately with my relationship and my partner, is just like noticing where my ego wants to grip on to like spiritual information as a sense of like righteousness, and also understanding that someone's personal truth may not be another person's truth. And yeah, I mean, you and I will probably do a entire episode on relationships, because this information taken into the world of relationship and the context of relationship is so powerful. And I think there's so much clarity that comes through when you understand that like you're in a container with another soul being where you're both sending the frequency of love to each other so that you can awaken and you can remember and you can heal. And I think where relationships start to almost expire is when one person isn't understanding that, and it's like too much head and just like trying to be right. And then it's like the constant balance of like coming back home to the deeper truths of love. And sometimes, yeah, relationships expire and there's a sense of like, okay, I no longer want to be receiving this type of energy from this person when I'm placing all this love outward. And I'm just saying this because I totally respect and honor when a relationship within someone's life is like, they can consciously be like, this was just the time for me to walk away. And then there's like also the other beautiful aspect of relationships of like always challenging yourself to just like open up your heart even more and to like see the soul of another being, and like how everyone is just always navigating life the best that they can with what they have. And it's just a softening. I remember hearing from Blue, I'm pretty sure, if you guys don't know who Blue is, she's a very powerful, I would call her spiritual teacher, leader. She has a podcast that she stopped recording this January because she wanted to take a break and focus on her art. But I remember her sharing that the spiritual journey and the awakening journey is just a constant softening into your heart. And at the time, it meant something totally different than what that means for me now, especially as we're talking about all this information. Because softening into your heart is not just softening and becoming like quote unquote weak. It's literally gaining your power and your strength. And I think the most powerful, strongest people in this world are the ones who are able to access the information of their heart and to soften into their heart in moments where it feels impossible.
Yes. I love that, because this is where this whole conversation, like we said at the beginning, it goes so far beyond what we think of as the heart of like, just be kind and all this stuff that's like, great, love it. Okay. But also like there's so much more profoundness to it. And there's so many different flavors. And like it's so interesting because the more that we practice that opening of the heart and compassion, and it's hard work in and of itself, because you really got to put your shit aside and be like, okay, let's open our hearts here. And you got to breathe and you got to relax and you got to release the grip. And in that space, you get those different perspectives about what we think is, right or wrong about the world or about people and how something is supposed to be. And it's so interesting to like continue drawing it back to knowing that the heart has a built-in higher perspective and is operating again beyond the local. And what's coming through is understanding. Actually, this is something that has been really powerful to learn about, almost like the different archetypes available to us as humans through the Gene Keys system. And the Gene Keys essentially these 64 archetypes based off of the I Ching, and it's also what the gates and gifts are based off of in human design. And it's really interesting because we all do this. We're like, we want to, when the heart is like closed and we're trying to like be right or whatever, or even whatever the flavor is, especially just like, let's say in partnership, it's like the heart allows us to see beyond. It's just seeing beyond the current perception and like the local iteration of the thing. And that's why the heart's power, I think, is so tied to like the new paradigm, because it's giving us higher perceptions and allowing us to really sink into different perspectives and ways of being that comes through this avenue of the compassion flavor of the heart, of the fire element of the heart, of the, I don't know, just all the different flavors. And like, I bring up the Gene Keys because it's just interesting to look and get this idea of like, oh wow, like there's this element of this part of a person that is this flavor, but it can turn out this way too. And how can I challenge myself to remove my like sturdiness and to soften into what is possible within us humans? And it's fucking hard to do because we just have like that strong mind or ego voice or whatever. And I feel like in this new paradigm, this is like a big challenge and thing we're being called to, especially as you see like what's happening in the collective and what we talked about in that episode of like every time there's like a fork in the road between closing your heart and opening your heart, it's like, whoa, that's where some work is. Like, and we're doing that as a collective. We're like challenging ourselves to choose love and openness and like the fire of the heart versus close it off and stay in our old ways or whatever it might be. And it's also another way of looking at love versus fear, and how fear really can't live in the heart, very long, if at all.
I'm also realizing that there's like a sacred time of closing your heart off to explore the perceptions that exist within your shadow. Like when you close off your heart, you're not connected to those deeper truths of like oneness, because you're literally taking time to explore the inner workings of your shadow and your psyche and your subconscious. Like if someone's going through like a really powerful like death portal right now of like feeling really heavy emotions and they feel like their heart is closed off, there's a divine reason behind that, because you're being gifted this really beautiful opportunity to explore from that seat of observation of the higher consciousness of, wow, like what is my mind believing about myself or the world right now that's causing this emotion to come up? And I think that's important to add in here because there are moments in life where you're going to feel your heart close off. And I felt my heart close off. I would say it's just starting to open back up in like a really big way, but it was closed off for like a few weeks, and not in like the entire time I was living my life, but it would show up in these moments of feeling very triggered and feeling a little bit like taken over by my ego. And I'm now looking back at those moments and I'm like, oh, damn, that's because there was like a sacred meaning behind me exploring what that part of my mind was believing or what I was being driven by. Because if we're never, this is like what they talk about in Bringers of Dawn, like you have to live within the ego to even have compassion for others, because then when you see others showing up in a way that you know is their not self, you can be like, oh, I get it. Like I have a part of me that shows up in my not self in this way, and it's really difficult and challenging. It may not be the same as how they're navigating and what they're navigating, but it allows you to have compassion and to drop into the heart.
Yeah.
And it's that constant journey of like, oh, okay, now that I have the perspective of like what it's like to be an ego or what it's like to have a certain fear or to be triggered, I can have such a deep sense of compassion when another person's navigating it. And it gives us the flexibility to understand, as opposed to just always be in your heart and to be tapped into the higher truths where you have no understanding of what it's even like to be in the shadow. So just wanted to add that in here because it's really important to understand the divinity of our journey of the contraction and the expansion, how it's not just like constant in the heart, because that would take away from the entire path.
Yeah. Because then it's like in your own inner experience, feeling in your own being the difference from having the closed heart and then opening it for yourself to give yourself the compassion and yourself the acceptance or whatever it is that you're looking for. Then it's like that is the healing. And when you do that on yourself, it's so much easier to do it for other people.
Yeah.
But that's why you really have to master like the inner game of it and the self-love and using the heart for your inner being, because then you're tapping into its wisdom. And then it's like everything you're saying where you have the ability to understand on a deeper level for others. And then we're not like in that urgency, like that quote says, of trying to like, I don't know, figure it out or problem solve. We're like, oh, cool. I'm also like you. We're the same.
Right.
We're both humans going through this thing. And like, you know, we're going to figure it out. You're going to figure it out. I'm just going to keep you company while you do.
And you got this. Like, that's another thing. You can just look at someone and be like, you fucking got this. Like, one of my friends was sharing that she's been going through a really difficult time this year. And yeah, it definitely makes me emotional because I'm such an empath that I can feel when someone is like navigating something in their life. But I just like looked at her and I'm like, you fucking got this. Like, this is a portal that you're in. And yeah, it's just really beautiful to look at the challenges that people face in their life and to instead see the strength that they're building through those challenges. And it's really liberating too, because it kind of takes you out of that seat of trying to control and save other people, because you understand the divine path that everyone is on. And then you can give yourself the same grace too. I had another realization when I was away on this birthday trip this past weekend of like, every single person has their shadows too. And when you start to get compassionate and loving with your own shadows, that's when you can have compassion and love for other people. So like start with yourself, and then you'll see that kind of bleed off into the way that you perceive other people as well. Because it's kind of difficult to see other people through that lens of compassion, or maybe it actually works the opposite for some people where it's like, oh no, I have an easier time having compassion for others, but a more difficult time for self. So it could be a very individual process, but it's interesting to think about that connection where like, if you're always just like looking at people's shadows and like judging the shadowy parts of them and seeing just only that part of them, that's like, it leads to a miserable experience of life, because you can do that all day long. You can look at people's shadows, you can point out, oh, doing this and showing up this way, but like, what are you getting out of that? Like, what is the experience that you're having by just constantly picking up people's shadows? And I had a really like healing experience this weekend of just like consciously choosing to tune into the light within people. And it was so liberating and healing and beautiful. And I think it's only been able to come through me having this deep sense of compassion and love for my own shadows. And yeah, I share all this to just challenge you guys. Like, we're all very intuitive. We can all pick up on whatever someone is putting out, or maybe like how their ego is showing up. But like, cool. So you notice someone's shadow. Amazing. Now what are you going to do about it? Are you going to sit there and like judge them because they have this thing about them? Or are you going to hold them with grace and have boundaries, of course, and know when it's time to tap in and out of showing up with love? And I think that is the route we all want to take, because you're only poisoning yourself by constantly noticing other people's shadows. And this has been a really big journey that I've been on, because as a shadow worker, my fucking gifts are seeing people's subconscious limitations and what emotional blocks are causing them to feel this way, and what they're perceiving about themselves in this way that's causing them to have this response to reality. And you got to turn that off. Like, you got to learn to use that in a way where it's in a container and coming from the lens of love, and to maintain your own sense of like vibrancy and centered like connection to your heart by choosing to see the light in other people. And it's a lifelong journey, but we all got this.
Oh my God. That is so beautiful. And like, that realization you're having and concept, you're able to have that and share that because you've tuned into the wisdom of your heart that is able to direct us, especially in those moments where we don't really know what to do or what's the answer. And yeah, I'm just like mind blown, because it's literally such a trusted source of the balance of all of it, right? Because it's like you're saying, knowing when it's a time for this, a time for that. And I feel like the heart shows us exactly what flavor we need right now, of like, is this about, creating this container for change, or is this about this? Or am I operating from here? What does my heart say? And it's just like, we're waking up this power that is so intelligent beyond what we can even understand. And this is kind of tying it all together perfectly, to see how we don't need to, like you're saying, we got this, and we don't need to worry at nearly as much as we do, because our hearts are tapped in and are working for us. And there's a whole team and a whole universe conspiring in our favor, speaking to us through our heart, through our intuition, through all the other elements of our intelligences that we have within us. And that is proof that we really are going to be okay. More than okay. It's going to be fucking amazing. And yeah, I think this is such a beautiful invitation for people to take that challenge on, of opening your heart and getting familiar with your heart, and going through the fucking fire of your heart, because it is transformative. And I'm actually reflecting now, someone really close to me was asking for some recommendations on how to process a breakup, and how to really like let go and move on from this person relationship. And this person was realizing that they were kind of holding on to it still, and kind of struggling with it. And I knew immediately in my intuition, almost all the recommendations I gave, I was like, you need to open your heart. You need to soften and heal your heart, because your heart being closed is blocking the passageway between like transmuting and healing this.
Right.
And it just made so much sense. And the thing is, like, it's a fire of the heart for a reason. Like, it's an intense, powerful energy. It's not always like, it comes out soft and compassionate, but it also sometimes is a fucking flame. And that's why it's a heart on fire. And the results are so worth it. It's like, what puts this whole thing into coherence, back to the whole freaking beginning point, is tying the worlds together, giving us a true sense of empowerment, giving us the answers that are not local to us right now, that are beyond space and time, empowering you to go after your dream and to be your unhinged, authentic self, to love others hard fucking core when it's really hard to do. And like that's making me emotional because this is the power of the heart. It moves us beyond what's right here and what we think is good for us. It moves us to be in unison and to be a true embodiment of the frequency of love, not just as a passing emotion, but as a state of being.
Yeah.
That is what the heart does.
I feel like I just healed through that episode.
Honestly, same.
Like something really shifted for me.
I love you.
Fucking ugly cry.
I knew tears were going to come in this episode. I was like, we're going to cry.
It's also so divine, like how these episodes come to life because they move through us in times when we need them the most too. And that's why we're all connected. Like all the Omis are always reaching out being like, wow, this episode, like you literally spoke to my soul. I don't know what. It just feels like you were speaking to me. And it's because we're all navigating a very similar journey of awakening. And maybe you're going through a breakup. Maybe you're going through a moment in your own relationship, a friendship, whatever it is. But there's a calling for softening that's happening amongst this community that we are all a part of. And yeah, I think there's like I just had a moment of realizing like you don't realize how hard you're feeling until you soften. And that was just like the moment of relief and release that I just had, because it just feels so much better to connect in with your heart. And you have this like split moment of recognition around, whoa, like that was not the heart, or like that felt that way because it was coming from the mind or fear. And yeah, I just feel like so at peace right now. And I definitely think that we need to do an episode on just like sacred relationship, whether it be friendship, relationship with a partner, because you and I have been in a friendship portal of like evolution where we're just constantly holding each other through what we're navigating. And I think this is like another continuation of this conversation, is to now apply it into the portal of relationships and the context of relationships. And I think we have a lot to share when it comes to how to evolve and grow within relationship, friendship, like sacred soul union, because damn, like this shit is healing.
It really is. I'm like, now the term like heart-led leaders and heart-led people is, it actually really means something now. Now we're like, oh, that's some shit.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, but 100% we will do an episode on that. We've also received some requests from people in our community for that, and I think it will be really powerful, and it's like perfectly aligned with the individual journeys that we've both been having in our romantic relationships, with our friendship. Like I think it'll be really beautiful application.
Yeah. I also just want to riff for a second on the Oasis, because we have this beautiful community membership called the Omi's Oasis. And if this is the first episode that you guys are listening to ours, I would highly recommend checking it out, because it is insane what happens when you are not navigating this journey from just your own, like you're with people. You are with people side by side, and you feel the other souls that are resonating with these words, and you're able to be like, damn, that fucking hit my soul. And there's another person and it hits their soul and another person, and you can all connect in a way where like, now I'm just even seeing the community that we have. It's beyond all of us learning and expanding. Like our presence is healing each other. And I put a prompt in the Oasis mastermind tier. We have one of our highest tiers is a for spiritual entrepreneurs or people that are aspiring to go after their dreams. There's a lot of people who are at the beginning stages of their entrepreneurship journey. And I put a prompt in there about celebration, and I prompted people and invited people, if they were feeling called to celebrate each other in the comments. And it is so beautiful to see like the words of love that are passed from one individual to another and how healing that is. And even just reading the messages of when these episodes come out on how deeply these words resonate with other people, it just reminds you that you're not alone and you're not meant to do this alone. And this next wave of awakening and evolution calls for community. Like, it is our freaking duty to commune with people. And you have an energy and a presence that is meant to heal someone in a way that you can't even see right now. Like, I'm getting this download now, how if you're feeling called to come into community, it's like your energy plays a very specific role in another person's healing and vice versa. And like, you'll never understand that. I don't even think we're meant to understand it. I keep getting these messages of like, you're not even meant to see this. You're not even meant to understand it. But it's coming through as like, it's beyond what we can even conceptually understand. So we'll leave the links for all the information in regards to our community below. There's 3 different tiers. If you're someone who is more so wanting to check out like our monthly energetic readings with our integration activities, that's the lowest tier. Then there's a mid tier where you can come into our Slack community. We have new moon workshops. We have expert workshop. Our Slack is always popping off. We're sending each other voice notes. We're supporting each other through challenges. It's fucking magic. And then, like I said, the top tier is for people that are wanting to really share their gifts with the world. You don't have to have a business yet, but you will by the time you come into this, or I guess by the time you like are midway through the portal, going into the portal, there will be a birth of something, whether it be a business or sharing your gifts in some way. So thank you guys so much for listening to me cry. I really love you. And thanks for tuning into this complete heart transmission that came through the higher realms and was meant to be received by you, and it activated a level of remembering within your own heart. So definitely drink a lot of water, ground after this, or if you want to open yourself up to more downloads, like now would be the time to just set that intention and to allow more information to come through in regards to this. And we want to hear what you're learning and what information and data is coming through you. So either share that in the Slack if you're in the community, or share it in our DMs or the Spotify prompts. So thank you guys so much for listening. Did you have any other last words that you wanted to share?
No, that was amazing. And I just second everything you're saying about the community. Like, it's life-changing. This community it literally blows my mind every day. I'm not being dramatic. Every day I'm like, this is incredible. It's incredible. Like,
and people pop in and they're just like immediate family. That's the part that I'm like,
yes. Like, we've had people who like found us on YouTube or something, listen to an episode. They're like, oh, you have a community? Amazing. They jump in and it's like immediate soul family.
Yeah.
Like, I literally don't understand how it's actually happening. I just trust that like, it's just because this is like a heart-centered, soul-led gang of homies, all over the earth. And like, it's
our souls have all met. That's the thing. Like, you come into this and you're new. People are like, hey, welcome in. Like, oh my God. It's because we've all met. We convened beforehand being like, okay, we're going to go down there, do this, set this community up. We'll meet in person at this time during this date. So
yeah, it's literally like, welcome home.
Yeah. You made it. You remembered.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. Thank you guys so much for listening. Stay tuned for some more powerful episodes to come. Hit that subscribe button. Hit subscribe on Spotify, Apple Pod. Get us in your feed so that you know when the episodes are released. We're now releasing our episodes on Monday instead of Wednesdays. So that's cool. You'll have the first day of the week to start off with a really beautiful transmission of spiritual remembering. So we'll see you guys next Monday. All right. Bye. Love you.
Bye.